Kaboom?
Yes, Rico. Kaboom.
A few weeks ago, I made a video about the fourth Descendants movie, Rise of Red. And in that video, I talked about how the plot and character beats in that movie were left in a very weird place by the time the credits rolled, that made the movie feel unfinished or even massively rewritten. I remember at the time the movie came out, this was a common criticism, and the most common response to that criticism was, just wait. Rise of Red was marketed as a standalone adventure in the world of Descendants, but the creators had promised that it was only the first part of the story, so all of the criticisms could be waved away with the excuse that surely part 2 would solve all of those loose threads, right? Well, now the second part has finally been released, so we can finally get the answers we've all been seeking about all of those loose threads from the first movie. Or at least, that's what you would think. But instead, Wicked Wonderland doesn't give us any answers to the questions that we still had at the end of Rise of Red. I think most people were expecting this installment to be a return to the past, where the audience would finally get a chance to see what happened at Castle Coming, what the actual prank was, and even if Ella had any involvement. Instead, this movie just kind of brushes all of that beneath the rug and moves on to bigger and better things. And to be clear, I think Wicked Wonderland is a huge improvement. It's actually one of the stronger Descendants movies in my opinion. At the very least, it's markedly better than Rise of Red, and even Descendants 3 in my ranking of the movies. But I do wonder if this is really what the creators had in mind for Part 2 when they were writing Part 1. Personally, I think what probably happened is that the original plan for Part 2 was something closer to what fans had in mind. Red and Chloe returning to the past, attending Castle Coming, and engaging with more time travel shenanigans. And I think this was changed after the lackluster response Rise of Red got from fans. In my mind, Disney saw that the fans were not happy, panicked, and demanded the fifth movie go in a different direction entirely that was more true to form of what the original trilogy had been like: an ensemble cast, an action-packed adventure, and a budding romance. And I can't say I really blame them for this shift in direction. Sometimes, as a fan, I'll watch something and I'll be really upset that something I like or wanted isn't included. But as a writer, I'll understand why the decision was made. An example of this that comes to mind is how, as a fan, I wish Little Women adaptations would put more time and attention on the romance between Laurie and Amy. But as a writer, I know that it's more important to give that screen time to Jo and Bear, because Bear is a character that the audience needs to be introduced to and grow to love. So, from a narrative perspective, the decision makes sense. And I could say the same about Wicked Wonderland. When the response to your last movie was that the time travel was poorly executed, shifting to focus on the consequences of that time travel is a narrative decision that makes sense. But even with that change, I still have quite a few issues with Wicked Wonderland that, if I were in charge of writing, I would want to change. Now, my approach to this video is mostly to tweak the story. As tempting as it is to do a total overhaul and change every little thing that bothers me, I'd prefer to approach this with a yes and kind of attitude. And that's largely the same approach I took in my last Descendants video. I'm sort of imagining that a Disney exec approached me with a script of this movie and said something along the lines of, "We really like this draft and we want to keep the majority of this, but we want you to go through and make some last-minute edits to really polish up the story." I don't know when that situation would ever happen to me, but that's what I'm imagining in my brain. So, with that said, we should get into exactly what about the story I would tweak. But before we do that, let's do a quick breakdown of the plot so everyone is on the same page. The movie opens immediately after the end of the last one, with Red and Chloe taking the time-traveling pocket watch and hiding it in the Wonderland Royal Vault, hidden in a labyrinth. Then we get our introductory song, Perfect Princess. I know that this song has been roasted endlessly, and, to be fair, the Nepo Baby line was pretty cringe. But Descendants has always been a little cringe, and I actually really like this song. I like most Descendants songs. I guess I'm just easy to please. During the song, we learn that in the new timeline, Chloe's mother, Ella, is more strict, and Red has a new sister, Pink. We're also introduced to a whole slew of new characters, so strap in. Luis Madrigal, son of Louisa Madrigal from Encanto, Robbie Hood, son of Robin Hood, and we're apparently not addressing the fact that his parents are foxes, Hazel Hook, daughter of Captain Hook, and the third Hook sibling to be featured in Descendants, Felix Facilier, son of Dr. Facilier, and presumably the little brother of Celia, the Smee twins, which were previously seen in Descendants 3, and Max Hatter, son of Maddox Hatter. After the song, Chloe and Red have a little chat about all of the changes they've created. Red is particularly shocked at seeing Max Hatter as a VK, having grown up on the Isle of the Lost, because in her original timeline, he was a nerd, and we love that for him. I bet he's a musical theater nerd. He's giving Ryan Evans. In this timeline, however, he was raised on the Isle by Maddox Hatter, who was banished there after he, quote, terrorized everyone with his inventions. Speaking of Maddox, we learned that when Red and Chloe traveled from the past back to the future, a young Maddox saw them and has since spent his life obsessing over the pocket watch. When he learns that it's been hidden in the Wonderland royal vault, he takes the Queen of Hearts captive to get his hands on it, but not before she uses one of her magical playing cards to send a distress signal to Red. When Red learns that her mother is in danger, she wants to go to Wonderland to save her, but goody two-shoes Chloe suggests going to Ella for help. But in this new timeline, Ella doesn't want to get her hands dirty, and tells Chloe that the wisest thing to do is to let other people handle it. Fairy Godmother says that Uma is working with the Auradon Council to concoct a carefully thought-out plan, which feels out of character for Uma, but China Anne McClain didn't want to return, so I'll accept it. After being brushed off by the adults, Red and Chloe decide to go to Wonderland anyway, where they are joined by Pink, Luis, and Robbie on the HK side, and Max, Hazel, Felix, and the Smees on the VK side. The HKs, including Chloe, don't particularly want the VKs to come along, but Red okays it, and everyone jumps into the rabbit hole. During this sequence, Red sees her reflection in one of these mirrors, which shows her the evil version of herself, and Chloe sees a similar vision. Curiouser and curiouser. When they arrive in Wonderland, Maddox spots them using these mechanical dodo bird spies, and sends them into a madhouse while he sings an absolute banger of a villain song. The gang gets separated. Red and Luis end up alone and have a little bonding moment with romantic tension. Felix and Robbie end up in a teacup in the sea, which is a nice nod to the original movie, and everyone else ends up in a mushroom patch. When they're all reunited, Chloe spots another dodo bird and wants to dismantle it, but Red and Max shoot this idea down, and that makes Chloe sad. They all decide to camp in a Lumeria tree for the night, and tensions are high between the HKs and the VKs, which leads to another song that I think is an absolute banger. But the song ends with Pink upsetting Max, who storms off outside. Chloe attempts to confront Red about being brushed off with the dodo birds, but Red is too focused on, quote, cleaning up the mess they left in their wake, and goes off to comfort Max. Hazel gets in Chloe's head about Red being the alpha, right when Red and Max return, announcing they have devised a plan together. They are going to steal something called the Oraculum, which Max says is his father's most precious invention. Now seems like a good time to do a tangent about the side plots, so let's start with Chessie. She is the daughter of the Cheshire Cat and our new narrator, and appears in a few other scenes. I don't have a lot to say about her. I wish she wasn't voiced by Awkwafina, and I wish she hadn't spoiled major plot points literally moments before they were about to be revealed anyway. But that's nothing new. Everyone has been saying that. I do think her spoiling is indicative of what we've seen confirmed is going on behind the scenes at places like Netflix, where the execs are asking the writers to tell, not show, because, according to rumor, audiences are watching distracted and need everything spelled out for them. But that's a conversation for another day. Our other side plot is about Maddox. He mostly just hangs around the castle, demanding the dodo birds find the pocket watch and bring it to him. Very Audrey-esque of him. He takes the Queen of Hearts hostage, but apparently not to drill her for information. She's just bait. Ella, after learning that Chloe defied her and went to Wonderland, uses this convenient plot device magical looking glass to travel directly to Bridget's throne room, where she's quickly taken hostage as well. We do get a song from the two of them. It's not my favorite, but Rhea Ora and Brandy do have some pipes. Meanwhile, when Maddox learns that his madhouse didn't stop the kids, he uses one of Bridget's magical playing cards to trap them in a chessboard instead. Chloe thinks the key is to play chess, but that gets Robbie yeeted off the board, so Red and Hazel decide they need to think outside of the box, and a dance battle ensues. Towards the end, Red and Hazel appear to use Chloe as bait to lure this carnivorous flower and use it to get Red onto this raised platform to take out the king. At least, that's how Chloe reads the situation. To me, it seems less clear, but the game is over, and Pink finds one of Alice's fabled cookies that makes them big again. She tucks some extra cookie away into her purse, and the gang goes to the White Rabbit's house to camp another night. Chloe is pretty upset with Red, but doesn't want to talk about it, so Louise suggests he and Red go out to get some air, and they have a romantic duet that I quite enjoy. When Red gets back, she once again tries to engage with Chloe, but Chloe just lashes out and then storms off. Meanwhile, Max has already snuck off on his own to get the Oraculum, and when he arrives, he's goaded by Chessie to use the Oraculum himself, and learns about the alternate timeline and the relationship with his dad that he used to have before Red and Chloe changed things. He's infuriated and starts singing another banger, while he makes some mysterious object from a dark magic book. It ends up being a bracelet, which he gives to a heartbroken Chloe, who then turns evil. They must have been exchanging eyeliner tips for the rest of the night, because we don't see them again until the morning, when Red notices them running towards the labyrinth, and immediately realizes they're going for the pocket watch. Her and a very confused Louise pursue. Louise tries to make a heroic sacrifice to get Red where she needs to be, but it's ultimately useless, and Red has a sad solo song. I think it's fine, but it's no if only. During her song, Red stumbles across this time capsule and appears to remember at least some of her childhood with Pink in the new timeline. She calls to Pink for help, and Pink eats some of Alice's cookie to turn giant and face off against Chloe and Max. They end up in this underground cavern below the vault with Red, who appeals to Chloe's better nature to get her to take off the evil bracelet and keep her from using the pocket watch again. Max is pinned under some rubble and would have been crushed to death if Red and Chloe hadn't rescued him, and this, along with the promise from Red that she won't abandon his dad, compels him to forgive her, and they throw the pocket watch into the Well of Wonder. No wait, that's Ever After High. They throw the pocket watch into the Well of Plot Convenience, which spouts out this cryptic prophecy. After Pink gathers everyone up, they storm the castle and trap Maddox in a chandelier. Bridget briefly considers beheading him before Red stands up for him, claiming everything was her fault. Nobody questions her further on this, and Bridget decides to show Maddox mercy. We end with a tea party, a big musical number, and a teaser of Pink finding something shiny underneath one of the tables and hiding it away. Now, if I got really nitpicky, I could come up with a whole laundry list of things to complain about for this movie. But, as I already said, my goal is to just tweak things a little, so I've narrowed my list down to 4 major points that I think need to be addressed to really let this movie shine. The first is rather obvious if you paid attention to the title of this video. There are way too many characters. This is not an uncommon criticism. The writers themselves seem to be aware of this because they keep coming up with excuses to get rid of Felix and Robbie, but it needs to be said anyway. This movie has way too many characters. Felix and Robbie definitely need to go. The Smedes as well, in my opinion. And if it were entirely up to me, Luis too. I don't hate Luis or his budding relationship with Red, but I'm fairly certain that his inclusion is one of the things Disney execs would insist on being included, so I'm going to keep him in my rewrite. But it's worth mentioning that I'm not convinced he's really necessary, and the story could easily survive without him. Which brings me to my second point, which is that Pink hasn't been developed enough. I think this mostly comes down to screen time. The bones of her character arc are there, it just needs more time to blossom. So, cutting extraneous characters would probably be enough to salvage her for me. We would just take any screen time wasted on Robbie, Felix, or the Smees and give it all to Pink instead to help flesh her out. But it's also worth noting that if I did cut Louise, it would be because the thing Pink really needs above all else is time with Red specifically. If it were entirely up to me, Pink would be Red's main relationship and the main driving force for her emotional arc. I think it's possible to develop Red's relationship with Louise and Pink, but if I had to pick one, I would have gone with Pink. I do have more to say about Red's emotional arc, but for now, let's move on to my third point, the weak side plot between Maddox and the Queens. And this is related to a bit of a nitpick, which is the lack of information we have about the Oraculum, and for that matter, the lack of information we have about how Maddox became a villain. I think these two nitpicks are easy enough to fix. We just need a few more lines of dialogue during this moment where Red learns that Maddox is a villain now, or this moment when Max first mentions the Oraculum. I imagine the explanation goes something like this. After young Maddox sees the pocket watch being used in the past, he goes on a rampage to find it. Over the years, he becomes increasingly desperate to find it, making more and more mechanical dodos until he has a veritable army of them. They tear apart all of Wonderland and eventually Oridon in search of the pocket watch, irrespective of the people in their way. This would be why Maddox is described as the worst villain in all of Oridon. Not because his tyranny was worse than Maleficent or Ursula, but because his inventions personally terrorized every single person alive at the time. Bridget banishes him to the Isle of the Lost, and from his prison, he needs to develop a new strategy, so he creates the Oraculum, a magical artifact that will answer any question. But when he asks about the pocket watch, he sees that his timeline has been changed, but not where the pocket watch is hidden, further devolving him into his madness. Which brings me to the start of the movie, when Maddox asks the Oraculum where the pocket watch is again, but this time gets a new answer. He's shown that it's in the Wonderland Royal Vault, but when he asks where the Wonderland Royal Vault is, he's only shown the Queen of Hearts. This is what prompts him to kidnap her to begin with, and not to keep her as bait, but to interrogate her as to the location of the vault. She's tight-lipped at first, but when Ella uses her looking glass to sneak into Bridget's throne room, a slip of the tongue leads Maddox to learn that the vault is hidden in a labyrinth, and can only be opened by a member of the royal family. Bridget refuses to open it for him until he threatens Ella, and now all three of them are trekking to and through the labyrinth. But before we get to the finale, let's pivot to my final point. By far the biggest issue Wicked Wonderland has is how it handled Chloe's quote-unquote evil arc. This storyline really doesn't have a lot going for it. Chloe comes off like a spoiled brat, who's throwing a temper tantrum because Red isn't paying full attention to her for 2 days during a crisis situation. And this is made even more frustrating by the fact that she's only known Red for like 4 days, a week tops. The build-up to her heel-face turn was incredibly lackluster, and largely didn't make sense. Her biggest complaint was that Red used her as live bait. And again, I'm not really convinced that that was what Red intended during that sequence, but even if she did, Chloe then complains that Red isn't listening to her, even though she's the one that shoots Red down twice at the White Rabbit's cottage. I really feel like the writers decided they wanted an evil Chloe arc first, and then shoehorned it in second. And if the evil Chloe arc is going to work at all, she needs a proper motivation. But, as I mentioned earlier, she's not the only one with a character arc that I have issues with. Red also has a bit of a nonsensical arc in this movie. I think it gets drowned out by all of the issues with Chloe, which is fair, but Red is somehow simultaneously perfect and doesn't do anything wrong at all, while also needing to apologize and redeem herself to multiple people at the end. In my other Descendants video, I talked about what I initially thought the girls' emotional arcs were going to be when their characters were first introduced. I saw Chloe as being naive in her concept of good and evil, and needing to learn about the concept of moral relativism. And I saw Red as being too scared to stand up for herself and for others, and needing to find her courage and conviction. And on paper, these two arcs work beautifully together. Unfortunately, the fourth and now the fifth movie are doing nothing with any of that. So for my rewrite, let's bring it back. In my version of the story, I see Chloe as being the one who's concerned about the mess they've left in their wake. She's horrified that her actions have directly resulted in at least 2 people being banished to the Isle of the Lost, and feels an urge to help them. And it's not like Red doesn't care about that, but she emphasizes that the changes they made were entirely unintended, and most importantly, she's scared of losing the new life she has. Everything she does during the course of the story is to try to protect her fragile new reality. She doesn't want anyone else to know that her and Chloe time traveled. She doesn't want anyone to know that she's not the perfect princess they think she is. She doesn't want anyone to know that anything strange has happened at all. So she's trying her very hardest to play the part, to be the natural-born leader, to be the Wonderland expert, to be the perfect big sister, to be an HK. And over the course of the story, Chloe becomes increasingly frustrated by the way that Red appears to be deflecting and refusing to acknowledge the damage they've caused. She finds herself siding with Max more often than Red, and more than once suggests that they tell him the truth, only to be shot down by Red. When they finally have a big fight, Chloe accuses Red of being selfish, of abandoning her former best friend Maddox, and perhaps most upsettingly, of pretending to be an HK, but being nothing but a VK at heart. When Max finally learns the truth, he doesn't need an evil bracelet to get Chloe on his side. She's already apologetic and desperate to right her wrongs. In her search for doing the right thing, she accidentally crosses a line, doing the right thing at any cost. She agrees to show Max where the pocket watch is and help him go back in time to fix his life. But if they're going to do that, they'll need someone of royal lineage to open the vault. So they kidnap Pink. That leaves Red alone with Hazel and Louise. And don't forget that Maddox is closing in on the vault with Bridget and Ella. Eventually, everyone will meet up together at the vault, and the only way to fix everything is for Red to come clean. To admit that she messed with the fabric of time against Maddox's advice, and that she abandoned what was once her best and only friend because she was so scared to lose what it gave her. She's no hero. She's not the perfect princess she's been pretending she is. But she wants to be that person. And if she's going to do that, she'll need to follow in the footsteps of Chloe, the one who's been trying to guide her all along. Naturally, Chloe and Max are swayed back to the side of good. I anticipate Maddox as holding a grudge, at least for a little while, but we can have the same basic story beats as before. Maddox is neutralized, Bridget and Pink are safe, everyone agrees that it's better not to use the pocket watch again, and we end with a tea party and a big group number. I think these changes are all that's really needed for the Wicked Wonderland movie. As I've already said, I could get real nitpicky with it and do like a complete overhaul, but I don't think it really needs it. I think fixing those 4 main things is more than enough to really make this story stand out. And at the end of the day, it's pretty minor changes. But with that said, that's all the ideas I wanted to talk about today. Make sure you let me know down in the comments what you think about my proposed changes. If you think I did enough, if you think I should have gone further, if you like the new and improved version of the story, let me know. I don't want to spoil anything, but I do also have a video planned soon about Descendants 6. That video is going to be more theories and speculations. So if you have any thoughts about what you think the next movie is going to be like, or what you're really hoping to see, I would also love if you put those in the comments. Some of it might inspire me. But that's all that I have for you today. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's video. I'll see you next time, and until then, don't forget to smile and wave.
Whoa, hey now!